I'm Austinlugo.
I'm Andrew Harp.
This is nothing to say.
Let's talk about Once Upon a Time in America.
Before we get started today, I just want to make a quick shout out to our friends at Watching Netflix Without You. It's basically a show kind of like ours, but specifically Netflix based, and it watches Netflix TV shows, original series, movies, and just kind of goes through them and talks about how great and or not great they are. Andrew, what's your favorite Netflix series, original series?
I can't even remember the last time I watched the original Netflix series. I think I remember watching Orange is the New Black, and I kind of like that show, but like I barely remember it. I'm just being honest.
I can't remember the last time I watched the Netflix original series.
I guess like Stranger Things was a big one too, but I didn't even finish the first season.
It's good. I mean, the first season's okay. Second season's no good. Third season's pretty good though. All right, let's get into it, Andrew.
Yeah, yes, sir. Once Upon a Time in America, 1984, directed by Sergio Leone. You know, you got the big star-studded cast coming right out the gate. It's really long. It's almost 4 hours long. I guess, like you, Austin, do you have a opening statement? I don't have an opening statement. I'd rather just kind of get into it because it's so long. But
Yeah, I have a couple things I want to say before we get started. So
yeah,
the
go.
original cut, of course, was actually 6 hours long.
Right.
Sergio Leone wanted to release this 2 3 hour movies, but the studio was like, no, we're not going to do that. So of course, famously, they cut it down to a 2 hour version, which I
Yeah.
haven't seen, but I've heard is quite terrible. And honestly, I don't know how you would make a 2 hour movie out of this. So I can only imagine like just the nonsense that was going on.
I believe Siskel and Ebert, I read on Wikipedia, they love this movie, specifically the one we watched, I think. And they said it was the best movie of 1984. And they said that the 2 hour cut was the worst movie of 1984. So, yeah, I'm guessing it's not very good.
Okay, but I'm gonna let the dogs in real quick.
You do it, Austin. Could you just explain really quick what the movie, is all about, more or less?
So supposedly back in 1974, Sergio Leone was offered to do the original Godfather, and he turned it down because he didn't want to do an American gangster movie, and he always regretted it. So in 1984, he made his basically Godfather movie. It's a almost 4 hour film about Noodles and his group of friends during the early 1900s, from like 19, I don't know, 10-ish to
Yeah, I believe he gets out of prison like
30.
1930.
So it's told in this sort of non-linear fashion, kind of similar to Citizen Kane or Godfather Part Two, where it's not like linear. There's really two distinct movies. There's the movie of them as children, and then there's the movie of them as adults. And I guess you could say there's a third film when they're like old, but that's kind of intermixed with, say, the one when they're, kind of middle age. But the one when they're young is pretty much kind of its own thing.
Yeah, you're pretty much right. It's his Godfather movie. It's his gangster movie. I guess we'll get into it. So the movie starts out with with a woman getting shot. She gets shot a lot. Two or three gangster-looking guys. They go into who we know as Noodles, played by Robert De Niro, and a woman is there, and she's like, what the fuck are you doing? And they're like, okay, where is he? And she's like, I don't know. And they shoot and kill her. I will say, like, these like first 20, 30 minutes of the movie, really, really good. Probably my favorite part of the movie is the first 20, 30 minutes of it. Very,
Mhm.
very good introduction. It's basically playing the end of the movie at the beginning. And I think it generally works. But yeah, these three guys are looking for Noodles. They're looking for Robert De Niro. They beat the heck out of this character we will know a little bit later, but I believe, he's like the owner of like this bar and club that they all hung out and worked in their neighborhood. And they beat him up, and he kind of is able to tell them that where Robert De Niro is. He's at an opium den smoking opium. He loves that opium. The opium den's kind of cool. It looks neat. He like smokes opium, and then he has like these series of like dreams, right?
Where like a phone rings.
Right. Forgot about the phone ringing. A phone is ringing at the opium den, which I think is, really good. Where it's like the phone is almost like crossing into his dreams, kind of. He's basically dreaming of his memories.
at the moment it's pretty confusing because there's no context of what these moments are, but they're like different moments in the film. And I love the kind of, and he does it a couple of times when the phone rings, they kind of have like this fake out, someone will like answer a phone and you assume like, oh, that's the phone ringing, but the phone will like continue to ring. And it's just like this constant ring. And it goes on for like quite a while. I mean, it rings for like a couple of minutes, like just rings and rings and rings. I mean, it's not like constant, but still, it's like it just goes again and again. And it's a pretty great way to kind of build tension. I mean, it's confusing. You don't really understand what's going on, like at all in the film. It's not really trying to explain anything. It's just kind of things are happening, and then it cuts back to the opium scene, and then he leaves.
And, basically the memories are that we're getting like these crazy scenes of like, people dying and people getting sold out and all this stuff, but which we'll talk about probably a little bit more later. But yeah, you're getting like kind of like flashes of all these different like memories and stuff of all this stuff going on. And yeah, they come back to the opium den and they're like, the gangsters, whoever they are trying to find Noodles. And he's able to escape and he gets back to, I think his name is Joe, right? He's totally beaten up. And he lets him know, like, yeah, like, I'm sorry, but, your girlfriend got killed and all this stuff. He's like, okay. He's pretty upset about it. So he goes to a locker. He opens it up, and there's, like, a bunch of newspapers in it with the expectation that there's probably going to be money in it, but it's just newspapers. He's like, okay. He's just like, he doesn't really get upset. He's just kind of like, whatever. And then he leaves. I like the part of that scene, too, where he's looking at a wall, which I'm assuming is like a train station wherever he is. Mm-hmm. And he's looking at a wall. It looks like something else. And then it cuts to the 60s where he's returning. And he's like at the same location. And it's like different looking.
That's one of my favorite cuts because he's like walking towards this like cool mural. And of course, the whole time the song Yesterday is playing, like a piano version or something like it.
I'm like a fan of
of that song specifically.
I love the song. I mean, it's a classic song, but it's like, I don't know, like it just feels kind of melodramatic to kind of work it in like that.
I don't know how I feel about that song necessarily in the movie, but otherwise, probably one of the greatest scores of all time. I mean, just fucking incredible.
I thought it was overused. I thought it was too all over the place. I thought that like the scores on these movies are way more energetic and interesting. And I thought this one was very like, it's beautiful for sure. Like it's very, very good. Morricone is amazing.
Yeah.
But like after a while, it's just background music. Like it's not even like, yeah.
But yeah, they cut back and now he's this old man, which the makeup for like to make Robert De Niro look old, very good. Like it just looks like how Robert De Niro looked.
Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah, it's like the 60s and he's back in New York City, baby, the greatest city in the world. He gets a car, he drives around. He goes to a cemetery where like they're digging up graves, what we will eventually know as basically like the Jewish neighborhood that he lived in as a kid, which we will kind of see later. And they're digging up graves and stuff, and he's like watching them and all that. I think after that he goes to meet Joe, right? Like he calls him. I don't know why he does that.
Well,
he could just go in.
Well, I think he's paranoid that he's gonna get killed because like it's very clear like in the next scene that the reason he's there is he was sent like this paper that like someone's been moved or something.
Yeah.
And it's fishy because he got it like 9 months after everyone else. So he thinks that he was brought back. Well, I guess, and he is brought back to the city for some sort of nefarious means. So he's very paranoid. So I think that's why he calls from the phone booth, is like he doesn't want anyone to be around. He doesn't want to be trapped.
Yeah, I think he thinks that like I think he's talking to Joe and he's just like, yeah, I think like the letter is basically saying like, like we know where you are. So he's like, okay, well, I'll go to New York then. And he and he and Joe talk for a while and about kind of like Joe's sister. Mm-hmm. And just everything going on. And they're like, okay, let's go to bed or whatever. And Noodles is kind of like walking around, the restaurant, the bar, or whatever. Well, another one of my favorite parts of the movie is when he goes to like kind of like that back room, and he stands up like on a chair, and of course he removes that brick, and he's like looking into what is probably another room.
Yeah.
And like it cuts, and you can just see his eyes and stuff, like looking, and he's like crying or something like that. And then it cuts again, and it's Joe's sister, and she's like dancing to music. A very beautiful sequence of like him like looking in, and it's like kind of like as if like, I guess like that kind of, for me, it kind of sets up how the rest of the movie is, where I feel like the movie, not the parts of the movie that take place in the 1960s, but everything that happens before, it feels like the memories of like a dying man with like regrets, and like lost opportunities and stuff like that. I think that tone, at least, is done really well throughout the movie, where you feel like you're watching, like I said, you're going into the brain of like a person like that, and kind of like watching their memories and their dreams. Yeah, and that like sets it up really well into the transition into the kids part of the movie.
And for me, the whole section, I guess, with the kids, I think that's my favorite part. It's just, it looks beautiful, sounds beautiful, just these like giant landscapes. I think Sergio Leone, I think one of the things that perhaps holds this movie back, and perhaps I'd argue Sergio Leone, is he's really great with wide spaces. I think that's why most of his films, and he only did 7 films, most of his films are, well, actually, I would say every film, but this really was sort of a large epic, right? It's mostly, I mean, other than his first film was like a Roman something, but even then, right, it's outside, a lot of large landscapes. And this is the only film that he really does in a city. And you can see that kind of constraint, especially in like when they're older, but at least when they're here in the, early 1910s, 1920s, or whenever bootlegging because of, illegal alcohol sales, whenever that time was. Like the best moments are when they're like out in crowds, right? And they're just these giant crowds of just people moving in all of these different directions and these beautiful crane movements. And he's great with large spaces, but it does feel at times, although of course, as you're talking about that scene where old and then young Noodles is watching the ballerina, is just a incredible sequence and an amazing cut to, and it's very reminiscent of the way how like memories sort of like come and go and just like it happens like that, right? It's not like dissolve or a fade. It's just like it hits you, and that's kind of how it feels. And suddenly like you're back there and you're just like, you're in it and you get it too, right? You immediately know who Noodles is. Like it doesn't need like this long explanation.
Yup, you got Noodles. He's a teenager. It's the past. And yeah, like it's kind of interesting. He's like in a restaurant. There's like tons of people everywhere eating and stuff like that. Where like in the 60s, there was like barely anybody. So it's clearly, a very popular joint where people are, eating and hanging out. And, you're introduced to his group of like friends, like his little gang of friends, and they kind of like run around in their newsy caps and, and they're in the Jewish neighborhood. And like you have all these like acidic people everywhere. I think that's what it is. Acidic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, he's hanging out, having fun. And it's clear also that like, Noodles like Joe, but she likes, obviously, he has a crush on her, really likes her. I'm trying to get to like the first big moment, you know what I mean? Which is, I'm just letting you know, like I'm just trying to move quickly. The first big moment, of course, is when they're gonna rob that drunk guy.
Oh, yeah.
You talk about that.
Yes. So they're at the restaurant and it's clear that they have some sort of deal with, I don't know if he's like a waiter or someone who works at the bar, and basically like he spots people and he's like, go rob them. Like they're this drunk, they're that drunk. And the scam is basically that you help them home. And then of course, while you're helping home, you pickpocket, take their money and that sort of thing. And so they find their target, which is just like this extremely drunk guy. And
it's awesome.
And so like they all set up, they're on the street. The one guy is playing his little,
that character plays his little pan flute or something.
Flute. Yeah, he's got like a pan flute. He plays like the theme to the film, and they're about to rob this guy. And of course, across the street is a sleazy police officer. They're like, oh shit, we can't do it. But there's this wagon coming, and this is a great moment. And so this wagon comes, and so like they hide next to the wagon, and they're about to rob this guy. But then this other kid ends up like helping him onto the wagon. And obviously, and and we learn later ends up robbing him. And so it's kind of it's the first moment where Noodles and Max meet, and they're kind of, it shows they're kind of head to head in the way they kind of work the system, right? They both kind of have their own way of doing it, but it's their first meet and greet, I guess. And so, he kind of follows the wagon down a ways. The guy's unpacking, and they have a little scuffle because he's like, "Hey, you stole my watch." And they have this nice like little pickpocket thing, right, where they pick each other's pocket, and then the police officer comes and he takes the watch from both of them.
Yeah, I like the introduction to this, and scenes like this I also like because I don't know how like the buildings next to the kids look like gigantic, and I also like the shots of like where like I think Brooklyn Bridge, right? It's like
Yeah.
right behind them.
Oh my god.
Yeah, really good shots, really good stuff going on there with the the large buildings and the Brooklyn Bridge and stuff like that. Really awesome. Yeah, like I said, everything just looks like really gargantuan. I'm trying to think what the next big moment is. Like you said, like they meet up with Matt. He meets up with Max, and Max is like, "Yeah, I've been in from the Bronx." Like you said, the cop robs them. And then I think they get the cop, right? They do their first big thing where they blackmail the cop.
Yes. Yeah. So basically, a little bit earlier, we are introduced to Peggy, who's basically a child prostitute. I'm not really sure the best way to put it. I don't know how old she is. She's a prostitute, basically. And all the kids, of course, want to have sex with her. And if they bring her like this little, I don't, what is it? Like it's some sort of sweet cake
It's
thing.
like yeah.
Yeah. And then there's this great moment. Who it is? It's not Noodles, is it? That takes the cake to
It's
Peggy.
like it's just another one of the kids.
He takes the cake to Peggy, and Peggy's getting ready. And the kid, right, just ends up eating the whole cake while waiting.
Yeah.
It's just a great little, yeah, it's funny. And it's just like, it's just this little tiny moment that doesn't feel like, I could understand why, like, if you were a producer and you saw this, you'd be like, why is this scene here? Like, it doesn't add anything. But I think there's something about the world building and character building of these kind of little moments, because a lot of this film is just kind of little moments that aren't necessary to the plot in a certain sense. And I just love that moment. I just love the moment of him, wanting this one thing, but being so,
It's right in front of him.
yeah, it's right in front of him, right? He's completely incapable of any sort of self-control. And it's, in a way, it is the entire, right? It's the entire system of Gangster, right? It's their lack of impulse control. It's their need to constantly be satisfied with everything. And so in this way, that's kind of representative of it. But after we meet Peggy, the kids run around, they're doing their thing, and they come across the police officer having sex with Peggy, who is underage. So they take an old school like photograph, like a big like giant camera, and they basically threaten him. They said, "Hey, you're gonna basically work for us now." He's like, "Oh, I work for Bugsy. Is it Bugsy?"
I think that's his name. Yeah.
Yeah, very 1920s
He's
name.
a good criminal guy. Yeah.
So he's like, "Well, what about Bugsy will basically will tear you up," and he's like, "Don't worry about Bugsy. We're fine."
Yeah. We're awesome. Okay. And then yeah, he I think like they are able to kind of like pitch. I think that's a little bit later, right? They pitch an idea for like the salt, right? The
Yeah. I think they get beat up by Bugsy because Bugsy finds it
beaten up senselessly. Yeah, they get beaten. They get horribly beaten
awful.
by
Insane.
Bugsy in his game in New York City, baby. Bugsy's king or whatever. Yeah, they beat the heck out of him. Beat up Noodle stuff, but then they're like, okay, we're just gonna go ahead and do it, and they pitch an idea, shit overboard. But what you can do is that you can like put, like salt, weigh it down up to the packages for you and give them back to you. Is basically the idea. It's their first big kind of like bootlegger, big enterprise that they got going on. And I think that they make a lot of money and put like in a suitcase and in the salt earlier. And I think they're basically just like, yeah, like this is basically just like our savings, like 50% of what we make in the group, the gang of kids, we'll put in here. I think that's what they said.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they're like, we'll just do that. So that kind of sets up the suitcase. It's supposed to be full of money when Robert De Niro goes and gets it. And then there's the altercation. So the final altercation for Noodles before he goes to prison.
Yeah. So basically, Bugsy finds out what's going on. And of course, working behind Bugsy's back, he's not a fan of at all. So basically, Bugsy with a gun attempts to murder a bunch of children. And of course, there's that beautiful shot that you see on the poster, which we talked about, the two buildings, and in between is the Brooklyn Bridge. And everything, as you say, everything just looks like absolutely massive. And I kind of wish they would have held on to that theme throughout the film. It's so beautiful. Like the children are just like tiny, and these buildings are just ginormous. And they're walking around. They see Bugsy. Bugsy's got a gun. They start running different directions. And one of the most famous moments is one of the youngest kids. He's got to be like, I don't know, like 7.
It's like the youngest kid in the group. Yeah.
Bugsy just shoots him down.
Blows him away. He's like, I slipped. he fucking dies, and then Noodles is angry.
Yes.
Knife, stabs Bubsy. I don't remember his name. He stabs him, and then the cops come, and then he starts stabbing a cop.
Not a great idea.
And at what, like 14, however old he is, 15, probably less than that, he goes to prison.
Into prison.
This giant prison, of course. Like we said, giant buildings and giant walls with nothing on them. He goes to prison, and then years later he gets out, and he gets to see Max again, who of course is played by James Woods. And then that sets out the rest of the movie. We're done with the kids part. I don't like the kids part. I think it's my least favorite part of the movie. I think it sucks.
Really? I could not. Why?
I do not. I think the acting between all the kids are really annoying. I think the acting with all the adults is way better and way more interesting. And I think that the stuff that we said about how it looks, that's one of my favorite parts of the movie. It's my least favorite section, but I love that part, how everything looks like really large and stuff. Mm-hmm. And dude, like just to say up front, like I hate the way that sex is treated in this movie. It's disgusting. Like I hated it. And look, I love Leone.
Yes.
He's amazing. Absolutely. And I love like his Italian sleaziness. Mm-hmm. But I thought that was very inappropriate in this movie. I think he does it really, really, I think it's done really, really in a very juvenile way. And I guess, like it would be done in a juvenile way if you're talking about like kids and stuff. But I thought all that shit was like really disgusting. I was totally sick to my stomach to that shit, dude. And throughout the rest of the movie too, as we'll talk about, like, I don't know. I just thought sex was just done very, very poorly. And I was not at all interested in any of that stuff. It's not even just like a moral thing. It's just kind of like, it just felt really wrong in the movie. It didn't feel like it was connecting for me. Mm-hmm. But I guess that's just how I feel overall about the kids section. I wasn't that enthralled by it, and I was waiting for it to be over.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with the way sex is portrayed in this movie. I'm not a fan of it. I mean, I think having sex in any movie is very complicated. I'm not saying it can't be done well. It has been done well, but it's a very complicated thing to do right. And although I love Sergio Leone, I think he's one of the greats. I think the sex scenes in this, especially, when we talk about some of the more less consenting sex scenes, they're very problematic. And even as a kids, they're still problematic. But I think, like, I guess you could kind of shrug it off as kind of like, well, they're kind of like kids, and that's just kind of how they see the world. Like, they can't really, grasp things. But I mean, really, just as much talking about the female characters in this film as much as we talk about sex. All of the female characters, basically their own role, right? Yeah. They're basically just there as like...
They're basically there for sex. You're basically a character that has a lot of sex, or you're a character that doesn't have a lot of sex if you're a woman in the movie. And if you don't have a lot of sex, that means you're like the best character, or like you like, I don't know, like you're more morally better than all all the women who are willing to sex with everybody. You know what I mean? It's disgusting. Like, and look, I'm not I'm not one of those guys that like is like critiquing and looking at every movie like that. You know what I mean? Because I think, like I said, I love Italian sleaze. I love sleazy movies. I love disgusting movies that, you know, use a lot of sex, use a lot of violence. You know, I love movies like that. I just don't think that like in the world of like these movies, these gangster movies, which there's so many different examples where, you know, sex and, you know, female characters are just done so much better. And in this movie, I just don't think nothing is expounded in those two subjects very well, if at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
In my opinion, but yeah.
And I guess, I mean, obviously it's Sergio Leone's fault to an extent, but also, I guess he didn't write the screenplay, right? Someone else wrote. I mean, it's based off a book.
I believe so.
What's that?
I believe it's based off a book, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, it's not great. And like, you know, if you're a director of the film, even if you didn't write it, you should like, I don't know. There's like scenes, and we'll get into one of them later, where it's just like, why? Like, I think the film can be 3 hours long. I think there's like enough good stuff to make it 3 hours long. But like, yeah, I don't know. Let's just move on. Well, yeah. I'm sure we'll get into more stuff soon.
All these things. Yeah, they're not kids anymore. They're adults. And James Wood, you know, basically lets Robert De Niro know, you know, hey, you know, we got a business going, you and I. Well, actually, I think before that, right? Before that, he gets out of prison, you get a flashback into the future with Robert De Niro. He's visiting the cemetery of his 3 friends who died.
That's right.
And he goes there and he's like looking around and, you know, like, yeah, like, yep, this is where my friends are died. And he goes there and there's a plaque for him. It says like in memory or like in more or like, you know, of our friend Noodles. And he's like, oh, that's kind of weird. And there's a key on there. Takes the key. Okay, goes locker from before. Gets a suitcase. It's filled with money. And I think on one of the you know, a stack, you know, labels, it says like you know, we have another job for you or something like that. It's like, whoa, okay, what's going on? And then I think more or less that goes into like the next flashback, right? Where once again, Robert De Niro, Noodles, is seeing Max again after prison. And even right away, like he's there, like Noodles is having sex with some random woman, right? He's like, I work in a funeral business, and there's just naked women in the coffin, and then it's like Max is like, oh yeah, she's dead. And Noodles is like, and then she wakes up, and it turns out, oh, he's just there to like have sex. She's just there to have sex with Noodles.
Yeah.
You never see her again.
No. Also feels like he probably would have had sex with her even if she was dead.
I know. He's yeah, you're right. He's like, man, yeah, oh, it's a shame she died. Oh, you're totally right, man. Yeah, but like, yeah, I would say my favorite parts from here on out are the stuff that have to do with prohibition, because I think it's very interesting. I don't think I've seen very many movies about. I think Brian De Palma has a movie called The Untouchables, which is about prohibition. But other than that, I haven't seen too many movies about prohibition. I don't even remember if Godfather Part 2. I don't even know if the flashback scenes touch on prohibition. I think they're less about prohibition. I don't think they do anything on prohibition.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of that has to do with prohibition was the show Boardwalk Empire, which does a really good job of it. But I can't think of any movies that really.
Some older movies that I haven't seen, you know, like crime movies or detective movies or something like that. But
yeah, I think like the original Scarface has to do with prohibition.
Okay. Oh, the first Scarface.
The very first one. Yeah.
Right. Which, you know, Brian De Palma also did the remake for that. But yeah, like you know, he, you know, the next section, you know, they go into back to Fat Joe's, I think it's called, and it's what is it, a speakeasy?
Yeah, it's a speakeasy.
You can talk about that.
Yeah, they're in a speakeasy. There's tons of people there. They're partying. Noodles is walking around. Everyone's like, "Oh, Noodles is here!" You know, he's saying hi to all his old friends. They're reintroducing all of the characters from when they were kids, which of course, like all the characters had pretty distinct features. So like you can pretty quickly know like who's who, which is actually it's kind of like a smart thing to do because then it's not like a oh blah 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 here's blah blah blah, right? You just kind of know, right? Like there's the guy with the eye, and of course Fat Joe is chubby, I guess. Like he's a little. And then you're introduced to everyone, and then of course we are reintroduced to Joe's sister, and she's like, "Oh, I've been counting down the days since blah 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 blah," and he's like, "Oh, bet you were."
To see you. Yeah, you're awesome. And I think she's like a ballerina, she's a ballet dancer, she's a performer now, and she's on the come up. She's on the come up, everybody. And then there's that like really confusing scene where they meet with Joe Pesci, which sucks. What? It's stupid that like Joe Pesci's in the movie and he's in there for like 5 seconds. He barely says any lines, and he's like one of the great. Obviously, this is like pre like Goodfellas and like pre like Casino, of course.
Yeah.
But still, like considering how like amazing actor Joe Pesci is, I wish he was in it way more. But that's okay. Well, they have like that weird confusion where they meet. Wait, what are you saying? Sorry.
I read that Joe Pesci originally wanted the part that Robert De Niro got, but he didn't get that part, and so Sergio Leone's like, "You can have any other part." And he specifically picked that part because I guess in the original script, which must have been just ginormous, like his part was much bigger. So I think that's why. And then it was just cut out of the film. So I think like he did like all this work, and then it was just all cut out.
Is this 6-hour cut? Does it exist anywhere in the world?
I don't think so.
Like it doesn't exist at all. Like there's no like director's cut or
I don't know. I mean, maybe, but
get like find like acetates or something like that and be able to.
Yeah, it probably like exists like on like the studio lot, right? Like if you went to the lot, like there's probably still the 6-hour cut, but it's never been released, but it might still exist, which I'd be interested to watch a 6-hour cut. Like,
yeah, I would probably also be interested in watching that as well. Maybe, but I don't know. But what they have like a scene where they meet him. What happens in that scene? I was watching it. I'm like, I don't even know what's going on. Like, what are they talking about? I think they're talking about business, right? I think they must be talking about like the diamond stuff, or something like that.
yeah, is that what they're at the? Yeah, I think so.
It doesn't matter. If you can't even think what happened, it's an unimportant scene. Who cares? Anyway, in the next scene, they rob a bank.
And when they rob the bank, because they're getting the diamonds, basically they're told this whole plan. And one of the things I don't understand about this movie, or I guess fail to, I don't know, is why Noodles is like why everyone, not necessarily why everyone likes Noodles, because he seems like a nice, well, at times he seems like a nice guy to his friends who are male, but like he's gone for like 20 years. They build up this entire business without him, and then they're just like, yeah, here's 50% of everything we do. And then they just listen to him, even though he never really has any good ideas or like does anything for the group. Right?
He's a wild card. He'll do anything, right?
Yes.
Like he'll go. He kind of reminds me of like Joe Pesci in Casino, right? Like Joe Pesci in Casino is really stupid and he doesn't really like help the group at all, but he's a wild card, right? He's good to have on your side, I guess.
Yeah, but then like whenever they do something wild, he's like supposed to be the reasonable one. Because like the very next scene, well, I mean, like, right, the scene at the bank, he instead of like doing anything, he just rapes a woman, which okay.
He's crazy.
I guess. But then the very next scene, they go to like meet to like deliver the diamonds, and then they kill him, and Robert De Niro doesn't even know about it.
Yeah, they like go to deliver the diamonds, and they're like, "Yeah, here are your diamonds." Actually, no, and they shoot him, they kill them, and then yeah, you're right. Like Robert De Niro, he's driving and he gets like upset. He's like, "Why did we do that?" Da, 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 da. And he's like, "Well, it was fine. Like we did it. It's fine." And then he drives the car into a lake. I mean, that is pretty crazy. He drove it into a lake, right? Like that I mean, he is insane. You know what I mean? Like I said, it's kind of like it's good to have that guy on your side rather than not, even if he is crazy.
That's true. That's true.
I like that scene though. They like shoot up the guys and then they drive the car into the water. That's I don't know why. I just think that's pretty funny. And then I think like you get like a flash forward again, where Robert De Niro's at the restaurant and he's watching TV.
Yeah, that's another. whoever edited this film, just all of the
Yeah.
respect, because there's just a bunch of like transitions moments that are just absolutely amazing. And this edit from when they're in the car to the next cut is like a burned up car and they're like watching it. It's so cool. Like you don't even know that it's been like 50 years, but then like you pull back and they're watching the news and the car blew up because like they were trying to kill like were they trying to kill Senator Bailey or were they trying to kill someone else?
I think they're trying to kill Bailey.
Okay. So they're trying to kill Senator Bailey and Noodles and Joe are watching on TV.
Yeah,
right?
they're watching on TV.
And it's clear that Bailey is just kind of this sleazy politician who, has dealings in the underworld and has been indicted, right? He's been indicted by
investigated, indicted, yep. And then you also see James O'Donnell on the screen, who I think in the context of the 60s is like a politician or something like that. He's like talking about like labor and work and stuff like that. And then it cuts and he's being doused in gasoline like in the 1930s or whatever. And it turns out that, he is or was a labor leader, right? For whatever, I don't even know what the business is or what the work is, but he's a labor leader. He's a union, leader, head of the union. And he's being doused in gasoline and they're going to set him on fire. And they cover him in so much gasoline. They cover him in like 2 like layers of gasoline. And they're like, we're about ready to like light you on fire, man. Obviously because, they're, it's, he's the leader of the union and they're anti-union, obviously people working for the boss. And they're like, you got to sign this. And he's like, I'm not going to do it. And then like right before they like light him on fire, Noodles and the whole gang arrives with the boss.
Mm-hmm. And basically they make like a trade. Like they turn on the boss and say, hey, we're going to kill him unless, you give us Jim for some reason. I mean, I don't really understand that move either. Maybe I just don't understand like I don't understand why they want him so much.
Why they want who?
I don't understand why they want Jim so much.
Jim O'Donnell?
Yeah.
I think they're being paid to protect him. They're
by like the union?
No, so Jim O'Donnell, he's the head of the union, right? And the people want him dead. So I think the Robert De Niro and his gang are more or less being paid or protecting. I think they're being paid to protect him and the union and from all that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
It's kind of like yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I think that carries over to the funny the police chief scene, right?
Yeah, that's a great scene. The police chief is just so enthralled because he's had all girls and now he's finally a good boy. And I love like the press as he's like walking out the door. He's like so schmoozy with like the press, right? He's like, giving like finger guns. He's just
he has a son now. Great.
And so he rushes to the hospital, and while he's rushing to the hospital, we cut to the gang who have disguised themselves as like doctors, and they just walk into this baby ward, and it's not really clear, like at the moment you're not really sure like why they're in there. Like I assume they're just gonna like kidnap, right, the chief of kid. Like that makes sense. And of course there's like a little moment between another woman comes into the picture, and again only seen as like a sexual object, like doesn't do anything. And then they all leave the room and you're like, oh well, I guess they did something. And then the chief of police goes in to see his wife and she's like, I want to see her baby. And he's like, oh, I want to hold this baby, I want to see his
yeah, he talks exactly like that. Oh, I want to see my son.
all of my daughter's his penis for some reason. I don't know. So he goes to take off the diaper and
disgusting. Penis. I didn't want to see that, dude. Like,
not necessary. Honestly, not necessary. Like they could have just like shown his reaction and you would have got the same thing. I don't know. I mean, the whole wasn't a boy though.
Whatever. Anyway, yeah, he's upset. He's like, I want him to like throw the baby around, like pick it up, be like, this is my son.
I mean, he does like hold the baby and pretty like
oh, yeah.
They're like, oh, shit.
Oh my god, he's gonna do something crazy, and he does it. He gets like a phone call or whatever, and they're like, "Yeah, we know where your son is. You better do what we say." I think it's basically they're asking to like not have scabs, like break strikes or something like that. Some shit like that. Something for the union, and you know he agrees to it because of course he wants his beautiful son, and he he uh I think they're talking about, and they're just like, yeah, we mixed up all the tags and stuff. It's like, oh, wait, they're all mixed up, and we're like, yeah, who cares? Like, which is crazy. That has probably happened a few times in history.
Yeah, that's kind of terrifying to think. Probably before just like, I don't know, 50 years ago, is
Yeah.
like the only way to label your baby was just a little
Obviously,
right?
yeah, obviously now when a baby is born, it's like, okay, footprint, handprint right away, like, okay. But yeah, like back then it was just kind of like, yeah, we kind of put like a shopping tag on it with like a number, and yeah,
Hope for the best, I guess.
leave him alone in this big room where the gangster can come in. And then you get another disgusting scene where they see the women from the bank in the speakeasy. They're in the speakeasy and they see the women again. Get another fucking awful scene. I'm sorry.
Isn't that a brothel? Isn't that like a brothel that they're in?
Are they at a brothel?
I think so, because like all the women are naked and like.
Oh, okay, never mind then. Yeah, I guess it's the brothel of Peggy's. I guess Peggy's brothel.
Yeah, because Eve's also going there because she works there on
Right. Okay, I thought they were at the speakeasy and she was hanging out there, but never mind. Yeah, you get another disgusting scene where she comes in and she says hi to them, and she touches their penis.
I don't, like of all the scenes, that scene just like
It goes on for way too long.
it's just, I guess, is it supposed to be funny?
It's not funny. It's like
I think it's supposed to be.
no. It's like it's got that Italian sleaziness to it, which once again I love. I love Italians, and I love how sleazy their movies are. I love sex in movies. Like they should put more nudity in sex in movies. But like I just like I'm just like confused of like the tone of these movies when it comes to that kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's supposed to be like this, incredibly moving and beautiful movie about the American dream and stuff like that. But like, women are treated horribly. And if they are in a scene that's longer than 2 minutes, is them touching like several penises in a row. Like, I don't know, like, I'm not even like necessarily against that idea of doing something like that. Like, I'm not like clutching my pearls, you know what I mean? I'm no pearl clutcher. I just like, I'm just confused with like, all the tone of the movie and the tone of that, and it's just not a good scene. I hate it. It just sucks.
The scene just like literally no reason for the scene to exist. Honestly, there's no reason for the character of Eve to exist.
It's kind of the scene where she like falls in love with Max, where she wants to be with Max.
Yeah.
That's basically what happens in the scene. Like she comes in and they're like, "Who are you guys?" And they're like, they put like things under their eyes, like a mask. Are like, "Oh yeah, you guys are the robbers." And then she goes around and like looks at their penises
to see which one was the one who raped her.
Yeah, she thought James Woods was the rapist penis. And then but then yeah, she's like, "Oh, I like James Woods a lot." And the implication is that they're dating, and they are. And that's the scene. Oh man, it's funny. It's funny because it's just like what's going on. And then of course shortly after that, Noodles goes out with what's her face. I wish I remembered her
name. We cannot remember.
The dancer, the sister.
Oh, they did. Yeah, he takes.
No, go.
Okay. Yeah, he takes her to this giant dining hall place. Basically, this really fancy restaurant, like right next to the ocean, and he's basically bought out the entire restaurant. And there's like all of these, maids and butlers all lined up, and it's all fancy. And he's like, la di da, and they sit down and they talk for a minute, and she's like, "Oh, Noodles, I've always loved you so much, blah 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 blah, but I can never be with you because you would something like you'd want to keep me in a box or something, something of that effect, right?
I want to like be an actress and a dancer. I want to do all these things, but of course
he wants to do things, and he's like, no, that's not what women do.
Shouldn't do that.
And she reveals that she's going to Hollywood, which pisses him off because, again, he doesn't want a woman to have, you know, things to do. That would
Yeah.
be awful.
Right. So as punishment for insolence to decide to do any kind of work or anything like that, on the car ride, I'm smiling, but it's like not a funny thing because it's really, really bad. Of course, like Noodles horribly, rapes her like in the car. And it's like a really horrible scene, and it's the worst scene in the movie.
Really is. It's just awful. And it goes on way too long. And
Disgusting. Ugh.
I was reading I like to do like the IMDb trivia facts. And I was reading one of the trivia facts, and they're like, oh, and then like the driver slams on the brakes and forces Noodles out.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not what really happens. Like he just like calmly pulls over and then gets out of the car.
Like, yeah. He doesn't like, yeah, like the obviously like, yeah, the driver is like upset that this isn't, but he like doesn't slam the brake. He like pulls over and asks him to leave, and then when Noodles offers him money, he doesn't take it and he drives away in a huff. Like there's no slamming.
So brave.
Yeah, but it's just like I do like the scene afterwards though. We see her on the train, she's going out the window, and just a blank stare looking at Noodles as the train is driving away. She pulls the thing down, like the curtain down in the window. And yeah, and like he's like all upset and stuff, like, oh, woe is me. Oh, what do you expect? the most violent thing ever. And you're like, so sad. My girlfriend. I love her.
Yeah. I don't get I think one of my problems with this film is I don't understand how we're supposed to feel about Noodles. Like we can't like him because he's a terrible person. And it's not like, right, it's not like one of those terrible people that like you love anyways. He's just like he's bad. And he's not like, bad but like super competent and like, so smart.
Yeah, he sucks. He's not.
He's just a sucky person.
Yeah, he's no he's no Corleone,
Yeah.
which yeah.
Yeah.
Like in Godfather 2, Godfather 2 is great because like Robert De Niro, he plays Corleone,
Mm-hmm.
the original. And he's you can see why he's, so good, right? Like because he's so smart and, tactile, and he is willing to do violent acts. But like everybody loves him, right? Like you can see why like characters in the movie would really, really like him, right? Maybe not like him, but respect him, of course.
Right.
In this movie, though, it's just like it's about a crazy guy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. And I think part of the problem is, when you talk about these big gangster films and like why people love gangster films, even though gangsters tend to be, awful people, is because they have motivations. Like you talk about The Godfather, like all those characters, even if their motivations are sort of evil motivations, they have a reason that they do what they do. Noodles never really has any sort of motivations, like through the whole film.
He doesn't seem to care too much about money. I guess he kind of likes money. I guess his only motivation is that he loves, the woman that he brutally assaulted.
I guess
He really likes her. That's like the one thing that he like actually like wants. But yeah, he's like, yeah, his. I'm not getting a lot in terms of desires. You're right. What do you want? And I guess that's kind of the difference, though, between like Noodles and Max is that we haven't talked about Max too much. The thing about Max is that like he's constantly thinking long term, while Noodles is constantly thinking short term. So I guess that's kind of like an interesting kind of dichotomy between the characters. And I will say that like another good thing I like about this movie is that I like their two characters kind of together. You know what I mean? I think they're good kind of like foils, you might say, to each other. They're good friends. But the way that they like interact with each other and stuff like that, I think is very, very good.
And so I believe, right? Yeah. The next scene is they're all back at like above the bar in like or is that above the bar? Is that what that area is? Like their meeting place?
Yeah. They're like in an office.
Yeah, they're in like an office, and all of the friends are there, and Eve is also there. And Noodles comes in. He's like, "Hey, I'm back. I'm ready to, do things." And they're like, "You've been gone for like weeks." And I like that kind of reveal that like you don't know that any time has passed,
Yeah, you don't really know.
and that you kind of experience in the way that Noodles is experiencing it, which is like you've been high, right? You went to opium den for like weeks.
Yeah, you're high as shit. You don't know what's going on.
Yeah. And basically they do like a bros before hoes kind of thing. It's like you can't women. And he's like, well, Eve's here. And he's like, well, fuck off, Eve, I guess. And then Eve just fucks off.
Yeah, James Wood like yells at her, which I'm sure James Wood actually also did in real life to that woman. Probably when the cameras were rolling, he probably yelled at her and screamed at her. James Woods probably did do that. This is about James Woods. Noodles is based off the life of James Wood. He yeah. So yeah, they have like a little spat and a little argument, and then Jim O'Donnell, he gets shot. He gets shot a bunch in the legs. He almost dies, and they're in the hospital, and I think they have to amputate one of his legs, right?
Yeah.
Damn. And they're in the hospital, and they're I think like after the shooting, I think they're pretty much like I think they're pretty much like, yeah, the strikes are over. Like I think like that area of business is over.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the labor guys is like, hey, I got a new business coming up. Prohibition's almost over. I think there's something talking about like cars or something like that. You should get in on it. And like Noodles freaks out, right?
Yeah.
He gets all mad, right?
Yeah, he's like, I'm not exactly sure why he doesn't want to get into it. He just seems, I guess he's comfortable with what he likes and he doesn't like new things. And so he gets like all pissed off and he leaves. And then Max, yeah.
I'm going to get a charger. I'm sorry. Sorry, laptop is getting low. But yeah, he's mad.
So Noodles is mad. He leaves. Max goes after him and he's like, you know what? I'll listen to you because, again,
why?
He's never had any good ideas. He's literally never offered anything to anyone. Like he's not good at being a gangster. His only talent is like being around. Like as a kid, I think that's part of the reason I like the kid part. He's a pretty talented, like petty theft, like gangster, and I like that kind of build up. Like he's a thinker, right? He's pretty smart as a kid. He comes up with that whole salt thing. Like he's smart, but then like as an adult, doesn't do anything. Like
I guess they might have thought of like the baby thing.
Yeah,
that was smart.
I guess.
What else? I mean, they run the speakeasy, I guess.
Yeah, but that speakeasy was open before.
Yeah, that's true.
So was the brothel.
Yeah, that's true as well. Well, anyway. Yeah, he's like, I'll listen to you. And they go to the beach. And James Wood basically Max tells Noodles, like, hey, we need to rob the Federal Reserve Bank. And he's like, you're crazy. Yeah, there's like this thing. It's like whenever like Noodles calls Max like crazy, he freaks out. Like he's like, don't call me that. Da, 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 da. And like he has like a freak out.
Yeah.
Which they don't really establish really in the movie. This is like a new thing.
Yeah.
It only happens like in the last hour of the movie.
Which is weird because like you have a 4-hour movie.
It kind of reminds me of the Back to the Future thing.
Yes, exactly. The chicken thing.
It kind of reminds me of the Back to the Future thing when Marty gets called like which that is done way better, right? Because it's like it's across 3 movies, and in the 3rd movie, it kind of pays off a little bit because Marty kind of looks beyond that, and he's like, you know what? No, and but in this movie, it's like it's only like last hour.
Yeah, I mean, in the Back to the Future movie, It isn't in the first one, but it is in the second one. I don't know.
You're right. It isn't in the
I know
first one.
it pissed me off. The chicken thing pissed me off. It's not in the first one. We watched them back to back. It's not in the first one.
It still reminded me
better. It's still better. Yeah, I don't get that. Like you have 4 hours. Like fucking write one scene. Like it's like 2 lines, right? Just give it to the kid.
You're crazy. Why are you doing that? Don't ever call me crazy. Like when they're little kids.
It feels like so shoehorned. Like I don't even understand why it's shoehorned in because it doesn't really add anything to the plot. I guess except like, I mean, I guess it kind of like, you know what? I bet you what happened is like they're trying to figure out, hey, because this is like almost the next thing that happens. Basically, prohibition's ending. They're going to do one final job. Noodles is basically like he's going to get them arrested because the Federal Reserve crazy. They're like, we can do this. We get them arrested, right?
Yeah, I think it's like, Noodles is like, he wants to get them arrested for this other thing that they're going to do, so he doesn't do the Federal Reserve Bank heist because he will die if he does it.
So I think what happened is the writers are sitting in the room and they're like, we can't have Noodles there. Like for some reason he can't be at the thing. So like something has to hold him back. And they're like, what we do is we just have Max beat him. They're like, well, why the fuck would Max beat the shit out of Noodles? And they're like, oh, I don't know. Like they call him crazy. And then they just, right? That's what it feels like. Like it feels like they just needed something for that moment. And so they just kind of like plugged it in, like one other place. It's not even like tastefully plugged in. You have 4 hours. Just put it in the beginning. Like put it as a kid and then do it again, like right as he gets out of jail. He'd be like, oh, you're crazy. And him being like, ah. And then just do it a couple more times. Like why? It's so dumb. It's so dumb.
I like when he freaks out. I like when Gingewood freaks out when he gets called crazy. He loses his mind. Don't ever call me crazy. But then it cuts to the flash forward, and they're at the Bailey Foundation retirement home, and the women that Max was seeing, she's at the funeral home, and for some reason there's a big picture right in the funeral home, like a bunch of people, and I think including who's in the picture. It's like a picture of a bunch of people. It's reminding me of The Shining. Robert De Niro's in the picture, and he's in the picture. But it was just like he's just like looking at the picture and he says something and I forget what he said.
Well, he says something about Max?
Oh, I guess Max is in the picture.
Is Max in the picture or is his dad in the picture? That's where they get the line.
I don't remember.
I don't know. What? Someone's in the picture, and basically she says, right, that Max's dad was like in a insane asylum or something like that.
Yeah, I think.
Just again, so extra.
But yeah, Noodles, he once again, so Noodles decides to visit his rape victim. He decides to, because actually, yeah, she's in the picture, right? He sees her in the picture. He sees her in the picture.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I guess I better visit my rape victim. And he visits her, and she hasn't aged, which they comment on.
Yeah.
I like to think that, like, it's kind of weird, but I would, like I said before at the beginning, I'd like to think that these are but it doesn't really work because it's the 60s. It's like present time. I'd like to think that, like in the memories and the dreams and stuff, Robert De Niro is like, well, then again, I forgot about the ending of the movie. I like to think that most of the movie, it's like the memories and dreams of, like I said, an ailing, desperate, clawing man who has like tons of regrets and tons of, worries and is paranoid about everything and everyone. And I like to think that that's how we're seeing the movie, which I think is very strong. So when you see her, it's like she still looks like very young, at least like a little young, like she has some wrinkles on her, I guess.
Not nearly as much as like everyone else. Like Robert De Niro looks like he's 80 and she looks like she's like 42.
How old is Robert De Niro in this movie? Is he like 40 or 30? No, he's not. I don't know if he's 30. In the 70s, he was probably like in his 20s or 30s. So he's probably in his 40s in this movie.
Yeah.
I think
so.
And that might even be a stretch. Maybe he's just in his 30s. I feel like it's really easy to make him look old. Like they did a good job. But yeah, they have a stupid conversation about something where they talk about Austin.
Well, I remember how the conversation ends.
Oh yeah.
Well, okay, I remember at the beginning he's like, say something, you hate me, you love me, blah blah blah. And she doesn't, I feel like what I'm about to say is right, but that also feels wrong. Is she like still in love with him? Like a little bit?
I think so, yeah.
That's what I thought. So stupid. Whatever. And he's like, I want to know why I'm here. And she's like, oh, how would I know? It's like, you obviously know. And she's like, look, don't go out the door because someone knocks at the door. And he's like, who could be at the door? She's like, don't go out the door. Everything will be ruined. Blah, 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 blah. And goes out the door anyways. And out the door is Senator Bailey's son, who looks exactly like, or is the same actor from the beginning of the movie that played young Max.
Whoa. So stupid.
I think the plot of that is stupid, but I think the reveal is cool. Because
I guess the reveal is neat. Yeah.
right,
It's like,
sitting on the throne, just like Max was earlier in the film. And like they don't really say anything like for a moment. And he just like pushes in. And it's just like it's a nice reveal. I mean, like the plot part is stupid, but it's a cool reveal.
yeah. And yeah, that basically gives him the indication that like, oh, okay, Max is still alive, pretty much. Okay. And he goes to a happening party at Bailey's place.
Yeah.
And he's there, and it's happening. It's a nice night. And he talks to Bailey, who is of course Max.
Yeah.
But throughout the whole conversation, Noodles refers to him as Bailey, Mr. Bailey.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think even he says like, Max is dead to me. You know what I mean? Like that person is gone. While Bailey is, still a person that is, Max is gone. He's dead. So Bailey is, the new form or whatever. And yeah, Bailey is like, look, I'm in trouble. I'm going to get in a lot. I'm going to prison. I need you to shoot and kill me. I need you to take a gun and shoot me in the head. That's why I left that money for you, because that's like basically your payment to kill me. Because I am, because I'm a crook. And he's like, I don't want to do that. It doesn't seem like a good deal.
For who?
For Noodles.
It's like $1 million. Just shoot him in the head.
But if he kills someone and he's found out, he goes to jail forever.
Yeah, but like it's Max's gun. He goes out the secret way. No one's heard about it in 40 years. But
I guess that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't do it, so.
Yeah. He just kind of leaves. I'm trying to think what else they talked about, but that's pretty much it. Noodles leaves, and you get this pretty interesting scene where he sees a garbage truck.
Yeah.
And it's driving by. He's walking down the street, and he looks down at the entrance that he was at, and the garbage truck is coming down. You see someone who looks like Bailey leave, and it looks like he almost jumps on top of the garbage truck almost, or like kind of like goes behind it. And it drives past Noodles, and he looks in the back, and the garbage truck is like whirring, you know what I mean? It's kind of like spinning and kind of crunching up everything inside of it. And it drives away, and you don't see Bailey anymore. He's gone. And I guess, you don't really know what really happened to Bailey, of course. It's completely ambiguous. Was it even Bailey? You don't really know. And it doesn't really matter. Did he jump into the garbage truck?
Seems like it.
If you jumped into a garbage truck, I think you would scream. You would like make a noise, right? Like if you were crushed like that, you would probably be saying like, "Ow!"
You think they should add a scream in?
Well, that's the thing. It's like, did he do it? I mean, I don't know. Like, if they put it in a screen, obviously, then yeah, he would do it. But you want to keep it ambiguous, I guess.
Right.
So.
No, yeah.
Noodles is like, huh, that's weird. and then I think you get the final scene, right?
Yeah. And right before that final scene, I like the moment where, I guess this is sort of part of the final scene. The truck leaves.
Oh yeah.
And then these cars come by, and this is like one of the scenes that I understand the least of the film. Because then like a bunch of cars come by, but they're like not cars from the 60s. They're like cars from like 1930s.
Mhm.
And they like drive by and there's like a bunch of people in them and they're like drunk and having fun. And it's this very surreal moment where like the past and the present are kind of like, which I think the film does a lot, where like the past and present kind of intertwine, and I think that's part of the reason why it's in like the plot runs the way it does, where like there's constant flashbacks moving forward in time, is because like time in the movie seems to all be happening simultaneously. Like I don't think there's a certain sense of like predestination in the film,
Yeah.
right? Like everything that's going to happen is going to happen, which I think makes this a sort of, I think it could be, with a couple of changes, a tragedy, because like the idea is that Noodles never had a chance. Like from the moment he was born, the day he died, he was always going to do this. This is always going to happen. Max was always going to end up this way. And that's just kind of how it goes. And I think there are certainly moments of that. And I think this is one of those moments where like the past and the present kind of blend into each other.
Of course, yeah, definitely. Hmm. I like that stuff. That stuff's cool.
Yeah.
It works really well. And then, like, yeah, like it cuts and Robert De Niro is young again, and he's going to the opium den to smoke some opium. He gets a nice hit of opium, and he stares right at the screen and he grins, and that's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
According to Wikipedia, apparently, when you smoke opium, you do get it. It does create very, very vivid dreams.
Huh.
So, like, you could almost, I guess you could almost say that like all the stuff in the 60s was stuff, from his opium dream almost.
Oh, so you're suggesting that he's just imagining this future. It's kind of like, have you seen The Green Knight?
Not yet, no.
Well, there's something similar to that in the end. I won't say what, but I think it's done better in Green Knight. But that is a kind of interesting idea, is that all of this is sort of like he never leaves the opium den, right? He dies there in that opium. Like he gets high and then he just like that's it and that's it. But he like dreams this whole world, and this whole world that he dreams really doesn't end much better than if he dies in that opium den. Honestly, the world's probably a better place.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he doesn't leave the opium den, and yeah. All right. Final thoughts, Austin.
So I'm pretty conflicted about this film. There are things about this that I just absolutely adore. I think some of the visuals are just some of the best in cinema, as Sergio Leone has done time and time again. I know you're not a huge fan of the score, but it's one of my favorite scores of all time. I just love it. I love every minute of it. I could just listen to the score on repeat for the rest of my life, and I'd be okay with that. The plot is, it can be all over the place, which perhaps maybe that's because it was cut down from the 6-hour original. Supposedly in the 6-hour original, there's a lot more time with Eve. I think that would maybe like, they might have actually had a character or a female character, I should say, that does something. It's pretty bothersome that all the female characters, their only role is either to have sex with people or to not have sex with people. And then if they don't have sex with people, they just end up getting raped anyways. So what's the point, I guess, of any of these characters? And it's just kind of gross and off-putting. I don't know. I think I'm gonna give the film an 8 out of 10. I think from a technical standpoint, masterful. Like the editing is just, it's near perfect. Some of the visuals are near perfect. I think there's a lot of incredible things about it. But there's just some serious problems with the plot and the way it treats certain characters that I just can't get over, which is frustrating because Sergio Leone has long been one of my favorite directors, and this was his swan song. This was his final film. But I think like most final films of any director, it just doesn't live up to the standards of their earlier work for one reason or another. And I think, and honestly, if you think about all of Sergio Leone's films, he doesn't really have female characters in his films. Like Once Upon a Time in the West kind of does. But again, she doesn't really have much to do. So I think Sergio Leone is at his best when it's just male characters. I mean, you think of The Good and Bad, the Ugly. Yeah. One of the greatest films of all time. There's I don't think there's a single female character. It's just all guys, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah. I think that's where he's at his best, which, you know, certainly has its downfalls. But I think just being constrained to small spaces, which Sergio Leone, I don't think works well in. I don't think he works well on sets. I think he works much better in wide, you know, broad ranges. But, you know, I enjoyed the experience. I'm glad I watched it, if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I was pretty disappointed with the experience. You know, I think technically the movie does look great, and I think it has a lot going for it on that end. But, you know, I just don't think, like, considering the movie is so long, I feel like we really don't know these characters at all. Like, I just feel like we don't really, like, know what is actually going on. You know, when you I hate to make the comparisons, but when you compare a movie like The Godfather or Godfather Part 2 to this, you know so much about those characters. They feel so real, and you feel like you really, really know them. While in this movie, I just feel like I don't know anyone at all. Like, I just feel like everybody is like, yeah, it's just so weird too, though, because it's like the movie is so long, but I feel like nothing really happens in terms of like any kind of strong characterization or characters that really like jump out to me or really connect with me. I like the music. I just think it's overused. I just think that like playing it incessantly, like I love music in movies, but it's like, I don't know, like it's just used way too much. And yeah, and you know, with this all the, you know, the sex stuff aside, you know, I've said my point about that. Like I said, I just didn't really like find myself really like connecting incredibly with the movie. You know, I love his westerns, they're amazing, but like I don't know, this movie just did not really like hit me in a really like meaningful way where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch that again sometime soon. I don't think I'm gonna watch this again, you know, anytime soon. I mean, it's good, you know. I will say that like for the most part, it's more good than bad. It is, you know, for the most part, a very enjoyable movie, and it, you know, it has like really good moments, really great 20-30 minutes opening. Yeah, I just wasn't super crazy about it. I think I'll give it a 6.
All right, y'all. Thank you for listening. I'm Austinlugo. You can find me at Austinlugo12.
You can find me on Twitter at 80heart24.
This podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube and Instagram at With Nothing to Say Podcast. And thank you all for listening.
Thanks so much.